Dudes, so this is a video about geeky stuff and this theory that I've been working on for a while about geeks. And I think that different forms of geekdom and geekery can reveal a lot about the inner psyches and personas of geeks. And I'm not any type of psychiatrist or anything, but I'm sort of a geek a little bit, and I basically just put a lot of thought into this over time and created this theory. So listen up, fools, okay? Alright. First of all, let me just define what I mean by geekdom. You can kind of be a geek about anything these days, but what I'm talking about here is things like sci-fi and Dungeons and Dragons and collecting action figures or comic books. These types of sort of fictionally based obsessions that people with no lives pretty much spend a lot of time thinking about. And, basically a person's imaginary, fantasy life or whatever you want to call it can kind of reveal a lot about their inner desires and the different ways that they, dream to escape the real world. And these fantasy worlds are sort of used for better or worse to do this and to suit the particular needs of different types of geeks. And I believe that all of the various forms of geekdom out there can kind of be broken down into three distinct genres that reveal very different things about different geeks. And as you can see here, the genres can overlap. And when I'm finished explaining these three groups, I'm going to unify this entire theory by telling you what goes in the center of this diagram where the three circles overlap. And then hopefully you'll be convinced that, I'm not totally full of crap or whatever. Okay, so genre one is the superhero fantasy. So this is like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and stuff like that. And these are most popularly manifested in comic books and movies and action figures and stuff. And this fantasy involves a typical modern real-world environment. But what's been elevated through fantasy is a particular individual or group of individuals that stand out among the rest as being highly exceptional. So what I think this psychologically reveals about a person is that they're basically a pseudo-narcissistic conformist. Okay, so in the sense that their fantasies, they don't have a problem with the world and its sort of rules and maybe the drab, boring way of that modern life might be set up or anything like that. But instead they just dream of being highly exceptional and powerful within this realistic base world. Not exceptional as in being a doctor or even president, but just inhumanly exceptional, one of a kind. They wish to be admired and loved as a virtuous hero, muscular, agile, powerful. And this is often everything that they're not in real life. So basically it's like a form of geekery that's based on dreaming about the opposite of being a stereotypical geek. So genre 2 is like the knights and wizards sort of magic genre. It's sort of like Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons and wizards or elves and dwarves and things like that, whatever. And it's mostly most commonly manifested in role-playing games, movies, and video games like World of Warcraft. So in this fantasy, the drab, rational, meaningless, and often boring worlds that we live in is kind of replaced by this world of magic and like legend and mystery and wonder. And these people are not elevated to be superhero-like exceptional types of people. They're just basically like regular people within the worlds that they live in. Now, let me just clarify something. You may say, well, like a wizard's kind of exceptional, because he's got magic, or like some knight with some super big sword might be like kind of like a superhero. But it's not actually true, because in these worlds, these are kind of just common jobs and professions that, a lot of people have and a lot of people do, and it's just sort of like, any kind of job you have in the world. Like a person could train to be a wizard just like they could be a doctor. If you just work hard enough, you can kind of be it. Like you don't have to be hit by, friggin' radiation or something to be this person. You can kind of just be it in this regular world. So this fantasy is effectively the opposite of the conformist superhero fantasy. These people are unsatisfied and bored with their environment, and they seek a world, with magic. And a world with magic tends to be surrounded with this sense of legend and destiny and fate, and all these things kind of create a sense that there's a meaning and a purpose, and that, sort of a hidden magic behind the world that, in our sort of regular, rational, meaningless, and sometimes boring lives, kind of isn't there, just, walking around doing whatever, So, and, another thing is these fantasies take place in the past, which we kind of associate with being sacred and less disposable and fabricated. Okay, so genre 3 is the sci-fi fantasy. So this is like Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, Transformers, and stuff like that. And, they often take place in space or the future. And it's mostly like movies and TV shows for this. So this type of fantasy appeals to people who are scientifically and mathematically highly intelligent, but are just socially inept. And, these are sort of like the stereotypical pocket protector wearing nerds. And these people fantasize about a world in which technology and science are valued as being really important. And, their knowledge of science and technology is, it gives them a little bit more social recognition, and it's sort of, life revolves around it, so it's more important. And, for like people who are really rational, it can be hard for them to like use their imagination a lot of the time in sort of a useless kind of, fantasy-like kind of a way. But because it's sort of the future, and because it's, it could kind of happen, it sort of offers a rational means for, plausible means for very rational people to fantasize about some other world. It could happen, sort of. So, and so those are the three genres, and there's some other things, like there are places where they can overlap, like some say Terminator is where sci-fi and superhero overlap, and some people, like, if you kind of think about anime is sort of like a Japanese version of all these things, except you got like ninjas and samurais instead of knights and wizards, and all that great stuff. But before I get to my conclusion, let me just say that there are a lot of people who just say that they like stuff from all three circles, so I'm full of shit and stupid, so I should just shut up. But, I kind of think that if you actually think about it, there's probably one circle that you actually like a lot more than the other two. And, for example, like liking the latest Batman movie is way different than playing like World of Warcraft for 40 hours a week, or like going to a Star Trek convention. So, just because you like all three a little bit doesn't mean that, like, you don't like one more than the other. And so cool. So all of this leads me to my conclusion that I mentioned at the beginning of this theory, because there's big difference between these three genres, but there's one series of geekdom that every geek, and I mean friggin' every geek, agrees with is awesome and legendary, and this is at the center of the diagram, and it ties it all together. And this, of course, is Star Wars, right? Now, I challenge you to find any geeky person out there who does not like friggin' Star Wars, because you won't find one. And at first glance, you might be like, well, that's just sci-fi, like, what are you talking about? But if you look closer, what are the Jedi really but kind of like these exceptional people that stand out like superheroes in the world that they live in. Like, you either are or you're not a Jedi. Like, you can't just become one because you feel like it one day, And if you look even closer, what do they call the Jedi? Well, they call them knights, right? And why are they called knights? Well, they have like swords, and they have the Force, which is just basically another word for magic, right? And there's like princesses, and there's like dark lords and stuff like that. It's all like the Lord of the Ringsy sort of fantasy all over again. So basically, like, Star Wars is where all of the psychological needs of all nerds basically just kind of overlap, and that's why it's universally praised as being like one of the greatest geek stories ever told. So that is my unified theory of nerdiness, and hopefully you agree with me, and if you don't, that's cool. Tell me that I'm full of crap. Give me some cool replies on this page, and cool, man. All right, take it easy.